Rutgers exists.
What's that?
Outside of the Sopranos. Okay?
Just trying to
have some respect.
Just trying to get everyone in the mood. Jersey's here. Stand up.
We're joined now on the 42 Degrees The Source hotline by Brian Fonseca, the New Jersey Star Ledger. Brian, I apologize. I respect Rutgers outside of just you think of Rutgers, you think of the Sopranos. So welcome to the show. Thank you.
I thought it was the perfect introduction, and I'm a big fan of Sopranos, so I could not be more honored to be introduced that way to be on the show.
Okay. All right. Fine. We'll let Josh get away with it. Maybe, I don't know. That's when you think of Rutgers, when the rest of the Big Ten thinks of Rutgers, they're like, I don't know. Let's do something with the Sopranos. That's cool. That still works.
I think so. I think New Jersey is a very strong Italian state. I think people love the Sopranos, and I think it's kind of a point of pride for the state that the greatest television show of all time was filmed in this state. Part of it was filmed in my hometown in Kearney, so we're all big fans of the Sopranos here. I think it'd be pretty hard to find someone who isn't a fan of the Sopranos.
All right, it is accepted. There you go, Josh. You're in. He's taking his victory lap right now.
Overreaction.
Did you go to Media Days, Brian?
I did. I was there on Tuesday for the first day. Rutgers was there, so it was a quick in and out trip, and I'm back in Jersey.
Did you find it to be difficult to get to Indianapolis?
I did not. This is my third media day at Indianapolis, and it's just as smooth as every time. Get in, get out, get some St. Elmo's, have the nice iconic shrimp cocktail, and head home. I thought it was great for me, but I imagine it's a little bit more difficult for you guys out in Nebraska.
It is a little bit. And that's probably mostly on us. So Rutgers is a team with, there's some real interest this year. I certainly am. I'm in on the hype train as of right now. I look at their schedule. I look at what they've done over the last couple of years. Greg Schiano is the only person who's really ever had any success at Rutgers, and now he's in his fifth year after winning a bowl game last year. What's the energy like right now around the program as they head into 2024?
Yeah, I would say a quiet confidence inside the program. I think they understand that they bring back a lot of guys that helped make last year kind of a breakthrough year, and they're hoping those guys take a step forward again and kind of make this year a special one. They were hesitant, Greg Schiano was, and his three players at Media Day, to make a big deal of expectations. They said, the generic, they don't want to put limits on themselves, and the sky's the limit and all that stuff. But I think if you put some truth serum in them, they understand the opportunity in front of them between all the experience coming back, between having the Big Ten's leading rusher and Kyle Monangai returning, and the schedule that is, after 10 straight years of getting beat over the head with Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, they're blessed with the easiest schedule in the Big Ten by far. They don't play any of the top 5 teams in the league. I talked to Jake Butt, who was very big on Rutgers on the Big Ten Network, and he essentially told me the stars are aligned for Rutgers, and I would agree. I think if all goes well for Rutgers here, they're on the precipice of a really special season.
Hey, you just mentioned it. I mean, it's the first thing that jumps off the page about them. There's no Ohio State, there's no Penn State, there's no Michigan. That's who everybody had to get over in the East. They're not on the schedule anymore. Rutgers has to be the team in the Big Ten that is at the biggest advantage, especially, its first year with the schedule that they got, because of the two divisions kind of coming together and the addition of the 4 teams, right? I can't think of a better beneficiary of what's happened.
Yeah, no doubt, and I don't even think it's really close. The world is opening up for Rutgers because every year you'd have 3 essentially guaranteed losses. The only time they beat any of those 3 teams was in 2014. They beat a really down Michigan team. This is they won't say it, but I gotta think they're thanking their lucky stars every night that they don't have to see those guys on a yearly basis, guaranteed. And then again, even this year, they're avoiding Oregon, they're avoiding Iowa. Everything really worked out for them this year.
Offensively, you mentioned Kyle Monangai is back. He was the leading rusher in the Big Ten last year. He ran for over 1,000 yards. There's a change at quarterback, bringing in Nathan Kaliakmanis from Minnesota, who had an interesting year a year ago in sort of a dysfunctional situation. I guess what's the feeling like and what they'll be able to do, the ceiling, I suppose, on offense for Rutgers?
I think you're never going to see them have an explosive offense this year. I just don't think the personnel is there, and I don't know if that's really Coach Kirk Schrocker, the offensive coordinator's style, really. And Greg Schiano's style as a head coach is generally more on the side of taking as little risk as possible and not turning the ball over. So I think the ceiling for this team is having another strong rushing attack behind Kyle Monangai, the offensive line taking a step forward, the wide receiver group which they bolstered with a really good transfer out of Monmouth. He led the FCS in receiving, Dymere Miller, and they added a lot of young, talented guys who, if one or two of them pop, they'll have a chance of having a good season. And then you have to hope the offensive line, which took a step forward under Pat Flaherty last year, kind of maintains that level and does enough to protect the quarterback. And most importantly, the big piece here, the biggest question mark is at quarterback. Gavin Wimsatt, as good as he was as a runner, as much as he provided on that side of the ball, really, really struggled to A, not turn the ball over, and B, make the simple routine passes you need to make to have success at this level. He was the least accurate quarterback in FBS football 2 years in a row, and you just cannot win when that's the case. Anthony Kaliakmanis did not exactly light it up at Minnesota. His numbers aren't that much better than Gavin on the surface. Last year, he hit, his receivers struggled with drops a lot, so that kind of contributed to it. But all they're really asking for Anthony Kaliakmanis is be more accurate than Gavin Wimsatt, complete the simple passes, manage the game, don't turn it over, and just kind of keep the ball moving, move the chains, and let Kyle Monangai in the rushing game really carry the load. That's kind of what I view as the ceiling for this Rutgers team, is an offense that doesn't turn the ball over, dominates on the ground, and does just enough to let their dominant defense kind of carry the way to victory.
I love the story that Schiano told about the recruiting of Kyle Monangai, who, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, he's got to be the best Rutgers player in the Big Ten era. I mean, coming back as the returning leading rusher in the conference. Tell people who don't know the story about how Kyle Monangai came to be and what he is now.
I think it's really interesting, right? So he played at Don Bosco, which is a powerhouse high school here in North Jersey, and he was the second fiddle to this kid named Jalen Berger, who Big Ten fans will be familiar with. Who he was a four-star kid. He was seen as the star of the class and star of the team. He went to Wisconsin, and Kyle Monangai was between some Ivy League schools when Greg Schiano gets hired. His high school coach stands on the table and says, "You need to take this guy. This guy is underrated. This guy can really thrive in the Big Ten." Greg Schiano follows his instincts, and even last summer before the season, I don't think many people expected Kyle Monangai to even be the leading rusher at Rutgers. They had this kid Sam Brown coming off an injury who had a big freshman year that they thought would be the leading guy, but Kyle Monangai, as he always does, kind of quietly worked in the background, and eventually all that work showed up to make him the Big Ten's leading rusher and really the engine of this offense. So Jalen Berger, for people who haven't followed, went to Wisconsin, transferred to Michigan State, and now he's at UCLA, his third school in 4 years, whereas Kyle Monangai has been at one school and is now the backbone, the bedrock of this Rutgers offense. So I think it's a great story for Greg Schiano. Always talks about Rutgers being a developmental program. I think Kyle Monangai is a shining example of that, of taking a guy who was a bit underrated out of high school and now, as you said, is arguably, I think, between him and Leonte Carew, two of the better players Rutgers has had in the Big Ten era, no doubt.
So you mentioned it, Brian. You got to, in order to do what they're going to do on offense, which is slow it down and hand the ball off a lot, you got to be pretty good on defense. What's the defense look like? Are they prepared to kind of shoulder that load for them this year?
Yeah, they bring back almost everyone that started last year. They bring back their rising star defensive coordinator, Joe Harris-Simiak, who I would not be surprised to see be a head coach in the next 2 years or so. And they got to hope. The only real thing they have to plug in is cornerback. Max Melton, their best cornerback, got drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, so he's gone. And at defensive line, they bring back a lot of guys, but the one major issue is they did not get enough of a pass rush with just four guys, without having added pressure from the second level. Greg Schiano has harped on that a couple times this offseason, and I definitely think that's the one thing they could improve on is just creating more pressure, getting more sacks, more tackles for loss. But they were one of the top defenses in the Big Ten last year. They project to do that the same. They're really good at just fundamental stuff, not giving up the big plays. That was their bread and butter last year. They really bent, but never really broke, and just did just enough for them to win a good amount of games last year. So I would expect a similar amount. I don't think they're a big sack team. I don't think they're a big turnover team, but I think they're a team that's solid and is not going to let itself get beat with big plays. And you really got to earn everything when it comes to playing against the Rutgers defense.
There are people fired up in the fan base for a Friday night, 11 p.m. Eastern kickoff at USC in October.
I don't think so. I think that when that came out, it was almost funny, right? You almost got to laugh at that. I'll thankfully be in LA, so I won't have to deal with it, but a lot of people are going to be sleeping in for a long time on Saturday morning after that one.
No doubt about it. And I mean, there's a couple big games early on. Rutgers starts off with Howard and Akron, then a bye week. Go to Virginia Tech, Washington, and then at Nebraska. I mean, there's a couple winnable games, but those are like 50-50 games. A lot of games will be close for Rutgers. Like, what do they need to do in the early portion of the season to get them in position to, potentially compete for where they want to go down the stretch?
I would say pretty much the entire schedule is 50-50 games, which is what makes this season so fascinating for Rutgers, right? Because unless you're a team like Ohio State, where you expect to win every game you play outside of the top 5 teams, like, you never really know what Rutgers is going to get. Last year, they pretty much split their 50-50 games. The games they were slightly favored in, they won. The games they were slightly underdogs, they lost. And now this year, Rutgers is going to have to hope that they win more of these 50-50 games than not, because you're really swinging the pendulum between a special season where you can go on the high end at the absolute best 10-2, and if you lose a lot of these 50-50 games, you could end up being 6-6. I would say is the absolute bare minimum for a tolerable season where people don't think it was a failure, right? So what do they have to do? I think the Virginia Tech game really dictates the entire season. Really, it's a true 50-50 game. They beat them good last year in Piscataway, but they got a lot better. Virginia Tech got a lot better as the season went on. They have a stud quarterback in Kyron Drones. So you got to hope, again, the defense is elite. I think the defense was great last year. I think they have to be elite for Rutgers to meet its goals this season. You have to hope that Kyle Monungai is at the same level he was last year, which is not exactly easy to expect. You never know if it's a standout season or if he really is this good, right? And you got to hope, again, quarterback play has to be better. That's the number one priority for the season. Ethan Kaliakmanis has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, and if you had to ask me for one thing, it's Ethan Kaliakmanis' play will kind of dictate where this season goes for Rutgers.
One more big picture for you, Brian, before we let you go here. How and why has Greg Schiano been not that the code is completely cracked and they're above this hill now, but it's in a much better place than it was as a program 5 years ago when he took over. Why has he been the only guy who seems to have been able to crack the code of being able to figure something out at Rutgers?
It's a great question, and I don't know the answer, but it is true that he is the one guy who seems to understand what it takes to win at Rutgers. He's a very focused guy. I think he understands there's a lot of things around Rutgers as there are around every football program, obviously, but he's done a really good job on the political level. He's built a relationship with Governor Phil Murphy, and that's resulted in getting some money from the state to help build a practice facility whenever that project gets underway. He's worked well with administration, the President Jonathan Holloway, and Board of Governors to get additional support for the coaching staff that was not there really outside of when he was there. And he's worked well in recruiting. He has really, really strong relationships with local coaches. He gets it. New Jersey's a unique state as far as the private parochial schools who have most of the talent, really a strong powerhouse. He's gotten a foothold there. He's gotten a strong foothold in South Jersey, which has some of the best public school talent in the state. And he is able to navigate all of that and has been able to build a strong staff that also understands just what it takes to get things going in Jersey. And he's expanded the footprint recruiting too. Essentially, he's done all the things he has to do at Rutgers. It's a unique job. And I know every school in the country probably says the same thing, but it really is a unique job. And he's been the one guy that's cracked the code. And you're right, they haven't done it quite to the level he did it the first time yet this time, but the trajectory really is on an upward, they're going upward now. And I think if all goes well this season, this will kind of be the one that breaks the dam down and Rutgers could feel like it was humming the way it was towards the end of his first stint here.
No doubt about it. It's a big one for him. Brian Fonseca, NJ Star Ledger. Brian, we appreciate it. And we look forward to talking again before Rutgers makes the trip out here in early October? Yeah, early October. So appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, guys. Looking forward to it and looking forward to trying my first Runza.
Oh, yeah. We'll get you hyped up for that one next time you join.
Perfect. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much.
Brian Fonseca of New Jersey Star Ledger, the New Jersey Star Ledger.
I like that guy.
Are you on the train? Well, he gave compliments to you. If you give compliments to Josh, then it's, you're in.
Yeah.
Compliments to the chef.
I'm a sucker that way.
Yeah, you are. That's okay. It's not a bad thing.
Everybody wants to hear good things about themselves, Connor.
Greg Schiano, the man with the secret formula inside of his head.
Almost like he's connected in a way that other coaches aren't at that school. Yeah.
I think what happens is, coaches, a lot of times if you're taking a job like Rutgers, lower level Power 5, it's probably your first Power 5 job. And you're taking it and you're coming in and you're like the Signetti guy from Indiana.
Yeah.
You're like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to close down the borders of the state. We're going to win and we're going to recruit everybody and we're going to do this and this and this.
And then in 2 years, I'm out of here.
And really the right way to go about it. I mean, Nebraska has it's a similar idea. You can make all the guarantees you want. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Like, come into town, build relationships, and be a developmental program. Get to work. You're not going to recruit at the level that some of the teams in your area are, if you're Rutgers, or in your conference or in your division, formerly your division. You're just not going to. So don't do it that way. Do it your own way. Build it, and it might take some time. Like, Rutgers can't be, it's not going to be a place where you could just flip it overnight. And so they've built and they've developed. The one missing piece, as Brian mentioned several times, the missing piece has been figuring out quarterback. They got Wimsatt a couple years ago. They thought really highly of him. He was a 4-star, but like an athlete, kind of raw type of guy. And they put him in there last year, and it just wasn't, it's not quite there. So they went in and brought Calic Manis in, and we'll see how that goes. But I mean, the idea is to make it easier around the quarterback, as I've said many, many times. They kind of got that, man. And damn, do they have the schedule. Damn, do they have the schedule. And he's right. That at Virginia Tech, home against Washington, night game, going to be rocking. And then they go to Nebraska on October 5th. So they're all 50-50s. Like, it'll be interesting to see how the season starts for them and where they go.
Take a couple of those,
but is there a world where they're 5-0 after, leaving Lincoln? Is there a world where they're 7-0 after hosting UCLA?
I mean, they're probably thinking a lot of the same things we are.
Absolutely. I think they're having the same conversations as it pertains to the schedule.
Could Rutgers be 7-0?
That's why that's the biggest game, Josh.
Now, I don't think they're probably talking about Rutgers football on New Jersey Sports Radio. Probably talking.
There's a podcast.
Sure.
I bet Brian's got a podcast.